Welcome to Slow Saturday Nights, Manas. And let's talk a little bit about your journey to Affine and how the thought of a startup actually germinated. I think the story that you had about the early start of thinking in that direction was very interesting. So, can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. I think especially my journey over the last 10 years at Affine have been full of what I would call serendipities and absolutely great amount of luck. I believe that once you have some bit of courage to step out, and if you persist, you get supported. And I've had my fair share of luck till now. So while I attempted a couple of my startups in very early days, just 1 year after leaving Kharagpur, I tried to dabble my hands at creating a web-based ERP for a small business. Did not have support, so it remained more of a, I would say, hobby kind of stuff. Then actually in 2007, 2008, I left my job and tried to develop something full time into relocations management. Again, did not succeed. Another lesson learned that you need the right kind of partners and you need a proper go to market and a lot of other things that you end up learning as assignments in a MBA class, but you don't apply in the real life, and you should. And that's when I again joined my job back at Musigma, that I came in touch with two of my other co-founders, Vineet and Abhishek, and we were really good friends to begin with. We spent almost 2.5 years first as friends, where I used to be their manager, but I used to be their good friends also. Though I do not drink, but I used to be their drinking partner, somebody who could carry them back home. So
Right.
I think that's where it all started. That you already there was this camaraderie, and that's where when Abhishek started talking about something around 6 to 7 months before we started that, I'm actually done with being in job and all, and I want to do something. So do you want to come along with me? I said, "Huh, karenge." And then started a series of conversations. Some very casual, some serious, some just over a mug of beer, some actually let's sit down and do some white papering and all. So I ended up shooting down roughly around 40, 50 ideas that he brought to the table, because I was actually not very serious about it. That's when he said that, okay, fine, if you don't accept any of my ideas, why don't you give me idea? I said, ठीक है चलो यार analytics में कुछ करते हैं. So I think it started more as a casual conversation, but I think because Abhishek persisted with it, and then Vineet also joined, and Vineet is a tremendous analytics brain. Uh, that's when the two of us, me and Abhishek, also thought कि if we are able to formulate a good team, and if we can persist for 6 months just thinking, I think we should be able to do it. So that's where we decided to give it a shot.
Right.
And also I think we could have ended up again being one thought that never started. But one fine day Vineet just resigned. He said, guys, I have just resigned. And that's where we said ki nahi yaar, ab to karna padega.
Right.
So I think it did start with some bit of trigger also at the end of the day, with Vineet finally taking the call that yes, we need to get started, enough of talking. So that's how it all started.
Right. But I think the story of, so with any startup, right, you have an idea, and you had like two ideas that you had tried to kind of take forward earlier in your life. And the journey begins before, right? You're at any given
Yes.
point in time, you're always kind of trying to do a cost benefit analysis and trying to figure out what should be my next step. And it's not the most intuitive route, right? The most intuitive route, especially when you're coming out of a college, etc., is let's go get a job, start earning, right? So talk a little bit to us about that part of the journey and how you've kind of navigated that through the years to actually come to a fine.
Sure. See, I think the first time I attempted something, it was working, more moonlighting, I would say. I had a computer at home, and I had just started learning Java, some bit of web development at that point of time. IBM had come up with some product called the WebSphere, if I'm not wrong. So it was fairly interesting early days of internet. Also, the dot-com boom had kind of busted, but still, we all knew that internet would survive. So it was more of a moonlighting. So I would say less of a decision to make.
Right.
But yes, it was again a fairly serious attempt because I did travel to a few places, try to talk to a few people. And back then, talking about something which is web based, I'm talking 2001, 2002, was fairly new. I mean, and going to small businesses which are traders running from lanes in Kolkata, because that's where. So I come from Jamshedpur, which is very close to Kolkata. I have a lot of family members there. So I attempted there, went to a couple of possible customers in Mumbai and all, and very early learnings into that you can think that this will be valuable, but sometimes the timing is not right.
Right. The
Things
market
need
is
to
not ready.
converge. Market is not ready for something like that. So hence I think that remained more of a moonlighting project. I still have those pieces of codes with me, but very early, good interesting learnings at that point of time. And then the next time I started, I said that one of the things I did not do well probably that time was I did not give it a full hearted attempt. I means I did not leave my job. I did not do it full time. I did not do it enough long enough. I did not persist with. So this time I decided I'll go the whole hog. So did the entire thing of planning it out and so on and so forth. But another very interesting learnings came out that I think spreadsheets are the biggest enemies for entrepreneurs. They lead you down a path where everything works out in your favor,
Right.
because when you start building your month on month revenues, you will always think very optimistically. You're an entrepreneur, so you will think optimistically. The problem is real life is not that rosy.
Right.
So I ended up building a very good run rate for myself for 1.5 years. Then reality struck. I think the next learning there was that you may have good idea, the market could be ready, but you have the right partners to persist with
Right.
you. And I think it becomes very very important. Thankfully I my wife supported long enough before she finally said ki, okay, theek hai, bring some money on the table. But jokes aside, I think she was a great support, but unfortunately I needed a business partner who
Right.
could work along with me. I think that's when, while it started very jovially across a dinner table with Abhishek and with Vineet and myself just chit chatting, I think 6 months were a long enough time for us to think that we are not just doing chit chatting, we are serious about it.
Right.
And I could sense that yes, these two are equally hungry people,
Right.
equally hungry, and I think equally foolishly optimistic,
Correct.
some bit overconfident also, I think, which is very important because hi yaar kar lenge, big deal. I think that is very important. So if you don't be so, that's where I thought that no, I mean, finally it's coming out well. And again, I had to convince my wife because we started Affine on the 15th of Feb, and my son was born on the 11th.
Right.
So my gift to my wife when she gave us the best gift of my life was that hey, I left my job and again I'm surviving on your salary. So taking that, and I'm still happily married, so I can confidently say I would have done something good in life
Right.
to deserve her. But I think yeah, that's where I felt that yes, things are converging and the market was opening up. You know, there were tons of people who were asking for analytical help, and we believed that there was a different way of doing it
Right.
possible.
And I mean, the support system, your wife clearly, that you've kind of built over the years is critical to
Yes,
an entrepreneur's survival. How
undoubtedly.
had the rest of your world responded to these trysts you had with entrepreneurship in the past? And what was the reaction over the years to, the third time you said, okay, a third time lucky, I'm going to try this again. A fine
Hmm.
it is. What was the
Yes.
reaction?
See, I think the reactions were, from some very, very good old friends. It was like, कि क्या कर रहा है यार तू? मत कर, दोबारा मत कर, अभी अभी बच्चे हुए हैं, मत कर. But I think, from practically everyone, the reaction was, yeah, you're still very, you don't have too many liabilities. ठीक है, even if you try for 6 months and doesn't turn out, you can always come back and join a job. Because earlier also, when I decided that, yeah, my second second attempt at entrepreneurship was not working out, I need to join a job. I was able to luckily get a job in a month's time. So I think the reaction was very very supportive. And while from the family you need that kind of a support, that not just the support but the confidence that yes, I think it would work out this time, don't worry, we are there with you.
Right.
With family, with friends, I think the support was even more tremendous, because they did not just give me the confidence. Many of us, many of my friends from my days at Kharagpur or at ISB, they actually rallied around to introduce me to a lot of customers, potential customers. In fact, my first customer was my senior from Kharagpur,
Right.
Swarna. So, while he did grill me as he would grill any other analytics partner vendor, and interestingly, without naming that customer, we worked with that company, again, a Bangalore-based company into travel space. Swarna was my senior from Kharagpur. He gave me the opportunity. Interestingly, he was succeeded by one of my very close friends from ISB, and he further continued to support me. So I think getting more than just a verbal support was what I enjoyed. One of my very very good friends, Sudarshan, again from ITKGP, he lent me his name as an advisor. He was a tremendously well-known analytics professional back then. He had worked in the Aadhaar card, that authority UI, IDI, I think. And I told him that, Sudarshan, I need to have a better, lineup of management and advisors and all. Can I, use your name as well, and can you support me in certain things? So he supported me. So I think the support was more than just lip service. Thankfully, we did not need money, because we were into services industry. So you need less of monetary support, more of other kind of support.
Right. And you've kind of picked a niche and you've stayed with it. Talk to us a little bit about how hard that has been, because I think one of the things when, especially in a space like analytics, where the opportunities are endless, right? Everybody needs analytics today, and the directions for growth are so many different directions. Talk to us a little bit about the pros and cons and the choices that you made along the way, and why you've picked a particular niche.
I think I'll just expand the term niche, because niche is about making certain choices, going in a certain direction, although some other direction may always keep luring you. So we were a services company, so a lot of mentors ended up advising that while you are attempting analytics, there's a lot of work on just regular technology also, which is coming India's way. And these are smaller projects, 5 people, 10 people, web development, outsource product development. And if you guys are into technology, you should be able to do that as well. So I think those are early days. You don't have enough cash, your three of us are not drawing any salary, so that becomes a big lure. And
Right.
making a choice not to do that, because we believe that there's a long term success ahead if we continue to do analytics well. I think that was one of the very constant lures in the first 2 3 years, till the time we got our first large funding through one gentleman by name Dr. Sai Vishweshwar. He is an extremely good family friend now. So I think those were the first few things that we had to navigate, stay away from the lure. Uh, the other big lure was to that we avoided very early days, was that when you don't have a consistent revenue, there's always lure to get acqui-hired. Like many other startups had to take that call. We also came across those kind of situations wherein some very very interesting possibilities opened up, and it would have been a quick good amount of money, roughly around 10 15 times our salaries and all, and we would have been okay. I mean, we would not have gone into a company mode, but we would have done well. I think avoiding those early acquisition calls again was decisions we had to make. And one of the very important early decisions, another one, was that given that I just had a baby, I could not travel to the US because it would have added to the expenses. We decided that Abhishek would travel to the US. Now, again, we would have very easily made the choice that, okay, let's first 2 years just focus on Indian market, because sending somebody to US is a big cost. Salaries are 10 times compared to US. We have to at least sustain him. We can't let him, beg, borrow, steal. So I think making that call, that even though you have very less money, understanding what is most important. We worked with in our apartments for almost 1.5 years. We scrounged on every single money, a penny that we have, but we let Abhishek go there because that was the market. So I think those were some of the other choices. Services companies are always lured in the choice of staying in services or doing products also. I think that lure still lingers around.
Right.
uh, so I think those are some of the things which are very constant for a company like us, that you need to avoid. And I think niche is important because it ends up defining who you are. So I can with great pride now say that over the last 10 years, and we completed 10 years just a couple of months back, at least there's something consistently concrete that I believe we have been able to.
Right.
Had it been just a shifting sand of times, I think it would have been difficult to define who you are. So I think niche helps you, define certain character for yourself and for the company.
Right. And how was the hiring process? I mean, obviously, you already had a three-member team on board, experts. How did you go about the early days of bringing the rest of the team on board? Because services is about people at the end of the day.
Yes.
You need to be able to scale up, ramp up really quickly in whatever direction you have chosen to take for a client. So, how did you manage that, especially in the early days? And how is that changed today?
Yeah, today is extremely different. I think even last 5 6 years have been very different because we were able to make a name for ourselves in Bangalore in analytics. So starting to attract employees, prospective employees became relatively easier. I think like any other startup, I believe the first few people that join you as employees have to have some degree of craziness to just say, okay, these are three guys who have started. Trusting your own vision is very easy
Right,
because everything falls in place. Your vision says that, okay, in the next 2 quarters you'll get X number of customers, a minimum of this much of business, you break even at the end of 12 months, then it is all rosy. It's easy to convince yourself. It's difficult for others to believe in you. And as much as we have to work towards it, there have to be certain amount of inherent craziness in those people. So for the first few people, obviously they are very very good family friends now. I'm proud to say that my first coworker, non-founder coworker Alex, is still the number one at Affine.
right,
Ashish joined us very very early on. Rajesh joined us very early on. Ramanan probably. Suresh was the second one to join. He was he interestingly came because Alex had come. He said,
right,
"कि तू चल रहा है, चल मैं भी चलता हूँ." I still remember Shiva, who's, if I'm not wrong right now, at PhonePe or MedLife. He's the head of analytics at MedLife. I'm not wrong. He used to work with me at Musegma. 6 to 8 months down the line, he said, "Ki, are you guys still alive? If you're alive, I'll join." And then I ended up kind of attracting him over a cup of coffee at Barista. So coffee shops have been a great place for us to attract people, very
right,
casual environments. And we said that there's not just the interview where we take the interview, you work from here because we don't have an office.
right,
So interestingly, then one of the early coffee shop experiences, we hired the barista who was serving the coffee there. We said, "Why don't you come over and make a coffee for us every day? We like your coffee." So Altaf joined us there. Rajesh, very interesting. I had gone to pitch to him. He used to be the DGM marketing and analytics at Mahindra Retail. There used to be this company by name Mom and Me, Mahindra Retail company,
right,
and Rajesh was the head of analytics. I had gone to pitch to him. He said, "Yeah, this sounds very interesting way of looking at analytics." And next meeting, he said that, "Are you looking for people?" I said, "Yeah, of course." So he said, "Let me join you." So I think some people, it was very serendipitous. Some people, yes, we fought hard to attract them. Very very glad to tell you that out of the first 40 50 people, tons of them have actually stuck around. I think that was very important. Apart from just these days, I would not say it has become easy, in fact, because the demand is very high, but at least there is a certain brand, there is a certain set of other people that are there who can attract people as references. But yes, early days, it's very tough, because you also have so many questions. They ask you that, okay, how many customers do you have, how many people do you have, and why did you let go this person, are you firing people, do you have an office, if you don't have an office, when will you have an office? So very interesting anecdotes. The first, walk-in that we conducted, that ended up being a disaster. But
Right.
we had to put up those pictures on Facebook and others to attract the next set of walk-in people. So we actually had some of our own people sit down with their hands, covering their face and then click some pictures. So all kind of jugaad was done in the initial days.
Right.
Putting up posters in front of many other IT companies and all that. If you're looking for a better prospect, check that 9 to 5 in a large corporate, join a company in a coffee shop. So very interesting, very crazy
Different.
ideas in the initial days. Very we did our one of our very early walk-ins at a Starbucks which had just opened. So that helped us quite a lot. So yeah,
Right. A long history with coffee shops, among
yes,
other
very long
things.
history with coffee shops among
Right.
many other things.
And do you continue to engage with people at coffee shops
Yes,
or?
yes, yes. So during these lockdowns, now Bangalore is into complete lockdown. But yeah, I used to start my day at a cafe coffee day near my house every single day,
Right.
and anybody who wanted to catch me knew that between 9 to 12 I'll be there for the first 3 hours. So, and I used to get my own nice corner there, thanks to them.
Right. Right. And what do you recall as your biggest wins? Not necessarily in terms of monies or gains or whatever, but what do you think were your biggest wins in the past decade?
See, if I look at some of the biggest wins, I think one, not just by a particular event, that this event happening is what I define as the biggest win. I think when I so when I'm celebrating my 10th year anniversary and I see somebody who joined me when I was 25, somebody who persisted with me when I had to unfortunately reduce the salaries by 80%. So there was a time when we told our people that, guys, we don't have more than 2 months of cash left, but we need to survive. So either we let go everybody after 2 months, or all of us take a 80% cut, and we survive for 8 months in the hope that third, fourth month we'll get back the salary. And getting to see many of those people either still be your employee, or many of people like Suresh, Shiva, Achal could not make it that day, and Sumesh called me up. I think that is a big win, that people who stuck with you at that time, still around you, celebrating your 10th year anniversary, people liking you who you are as a human being. I think that was a big win for the last 10 years for us. Surviving as three co-founders for 10 years was not, I would say, a easy thing. I think what we survived through several intellectual fights was the fact that we were friends before we started.
Right.
So I think that helped us survive the 10 years very well. Is getting customers very early on, I think that was a big win. So we landed a customer that was into financial services, the biggest name in the credit card industry. And I think it felt very good that a company like that is trusting another startup which is hardly around 10 people. I think that gave us a confidence very early days that yes, if you're doing it right, there will be companies that will back you up. It's not very bad old corporate world out there. If if you genuinely do want to do something interesting for them, they would support you. you know um, Getting the support of a very good investor, uh, Dr. Sai Vishweshwar, who has been with us for 9 years now. I think those were very good wins for us. So I think last 10 years have been absolutely fantastic. Multiple wins along the way, and we continue to celebrate each of them.
Right. And talk to us a little bit more about mentors, guides, advisors. I think you mentioned one or two of them already. And how have you kind of tackled that requirement at an organizational level and at a personal level as well? As an entrepreneur, it's not an easy journey, right? There are those moments when you really need to reach out. How have you handled that?
So I think I have been again very fortunate, I would say, in having some very bright minds as people who were ready to lend a ear and give some very good advice. So Vaibhav Tiwari, who is the chief operating officer at Practo, I've not checked up his LinkedIn. Maybe he is already the CEO, but at least he was. He was one among the founding members of Practo. And when I did my first attempt at entrepreneurship in 2007, my startup got admitted into a particular competition with Economic Times. He was the judge there, and he helped me back then also. And then when I started Affine, then again, I asked him, asked his opinion from time to time, because he's one of the pioneers of tech services companies in India, tech industry in India. So people like Webber, people like many other people that I um just missing on the names right now, but there have been people who very patiently heard me out. One of my very old managers from Dell, I worked at Dell for around 8 9 months. Pankaj Rai, happens to be a very very good friend and mentor, very easily available, very easily. For someone like Pankaj, who definitely is extremely busy in his professional life, the ease with which he comes across and helps you out, I think that has been tremendous. So both in terms of professional help, as well as sometimes just somebody you can sit across and share some thoughts, some pains, and maybe they'll not give you any advice, but they will say, "Ha, hota hai, don't worry, it'll this too shall pass." But I think that's very important, especially in entrepreneurship, to have your mentors, and somebody who can also make you eat the humble pie time to time,
Right.
that do it this way. Some very blunt people also, and very very good advices, very blunt advices, that this will not work out, don't do this. I think that's also very important, instead of just people who could say, yes, continue doing this.
Right.
Mentors are definitely very important. If you can especially have people that have had in your past professional life, who know you as character also, apart from just as a business person, I think that helps a lot.
Right. Right. What is that one thing that you've learned from all of these mentors, any of these mentors, that you wish you'd known before?
I think one of the things that came at a very very crucial juncture in one of my discussions with Bev was the fact that, especially in entrepreneurship, much more than in professional career, you get to make, you come across situations where you have to make very very tough calls. So walking up to my team and declaring that, guys, we are left with just 2 months of cash, less of business coming, and this deal that was coming has just fallen through. We have 2 months of cash. Either we take 80% salary cut, 80 90% in certain cases. I believe we delayed that call,
Right.
uh, because we just thought that no, it will not work out. But or maybe either people will leave, or let's hang around for another 2 months before doing that. So I think I wish I had figured it out earlier, and that's why I started with saying that Excel sheets are the worst enemies for entrepreneurs.
Right.
No offense meant to investors, but we end up creating Excel sheets only for them.
Right.
uh, because real life does not work in the form of an Excel sheet that month over a month there'll be a 5% jump. Life doesn't happen in very predictable
Predictable.
series of events. It's not predictable at all, and especially entrepreneurship, your job may be some bit predictable, but not entrepreneurship. So I think I wish I had either had that experience earlier, or somebody had told me in my first few months at Affine that yes, you will come across these times and you'll have to make tough choices. So thanks to Weber, at least that time I was able to make the right choice.
Right. Tell us about one really, really fun aspect of this entire journey that nobody else knows.
So at the cost of not my one of my first few customers listening to this and suing me for it, but so there was this gentleman, and I'll not name him right now, at least, but he used to be one of my first customers from the US, and he said that I'm coming over to India because he was an Indian living there, and I knew him from the past. Um, and he's so at that time he did not know that the so-called office that we were working from was also where Abhishek and Vineet used to live, and not just Abhishek and Vineet, but we were running out of cash. So even my first two employees, Alex and Suresh, actually used to live in the same apartment. So there were two rooms of a 3 BHK where four of them were living. The third room was a conference room. We had just put up some barricades and all. and the fifth room, which was or rather the hall, was where we used to work from. So this gentleman, he came down, and we put him up in a nice guest house and all. And before and 9 a.m. he was there in Bangalore for almost 15 days. 9 a.m. he'll come to our so-called office, and before that we'll do the entire cleanup, mop it back, remove all signs of somebody staying here. So the kitchen used to be wiped out clean, utensils hidden. That no, this is just more of a pantry. It's not actually a kitchen. And after he comes in, couple of employees, so-called employees, will come and instead of coming out from their room, and those two rooms we would lock up and say that because we don't need these two rooms, the landlord has reduced the rent, and this hall and this room, conference room, are the only two available. And also I think that was really fun for the first couple of years that we worked from that office. Another interesting set of memories from there again, that by the time we left that apartment office, we were around 15 of us. So every day a few people will come, and all these very young guys and their bikes and all, and the security will ask, where are you going? The problem happened was that because you're not allowed to run business from apartments, so then they had to all the time take some other name. So I convinced a couple of my friends from the apartment that this employee will come as your guest, this employee will come as your guest, till one fine day the gentleman opposite that flat, he figured out that every day the same 15 people are coming at 9, leaving at 7:30, all of them coming with their helmets on. And one fine day he saw the gate open and saw people working from there, so then he kicked us out. So very interesting memories from there.
Right, right. And you had earlier startup experiences. What were your key takeaways from there, and how did that influence what you did with Affine?
I think in both the startups, one common learning I had was that um, there's a huge premium to having the right kind of people as your partners,
Right,
and it has to work all the sides. I need to become equally valuable to my partners, and not just by probably being the gray hair among the young ones, but in terms of being able to hustle as much as they are doing or more than them, being able to put up with the sacrifices in equal amount and share the glory in the same amount. So I think the value of partnership is something I learned very, very early, thankfully, before I started Affine, which ended up being the swan song for us. But I think that was one big lesson. The other big lesson was that go frugal as much as you can. I think, in my first serious attempt at entrepreneurship, when I had left my job in 2007, I did not do it the right way in terms of managing my personal cash, I would say. I could have gone a little more frugal instead of starting to advertise very early on. I could have tried my hands at using more of professional networking. And I think I did not use my professional network as aggressively as I did in Affine, and it reaped amazing benefits. And you just need to reach out to people. There are tons of people who are ready to help you, sometimes not even known to you, but the sometimes I've in general I have come across only good people, I would say. Very,
right,
very few people probably who would have said no knowingly, that oh, you need help but I'll not help you.
right,
Maybe they don't have the time. So I think those were the two three very important things that helped me early on in Affine, that build an environment of trust with your partners, with your employees. If you have some bad news to give that bad news very, very plain and simple, rather than trying to sugarcoat it, because I think long term will survive on good, bad, ugly, all being digested equally well. And then go frugal in the initial days, and call upon your network, call upon your family and friends. I had to pay salary for a certain month. I did not have cash immediately because the client money would come on the third. I did not hesitate to call up a few friends and ask them for a favor. Guys, I need a few lakhs for the next just 4 or 5 days. Thankfully I was able to return on the fifth day, but yes, I called upon and they helped. So I think one should not be shy calling for help. If you're
right,
an entrepreneur, don't be shy.
right. And this was Affine came at a time that was quite difficult, right? I mean, you say that you just had your baby and you were making this call for the third time. setting out on a path of unpredictability. What was the hardest thing for you in actually starting up Affine?
I think the hardest thing undoubtedly was taking the call at that time. That, especially when I had my first baby, emotionally very very high for me and my wife. We did not come from a background where we would have had a huge amount of saving, that a couple of crores lying in the bank, that the first few years will fly by any which ways. My wife was on a maternity break, so in a certain manner I was also putting her through a lot of difficult choices to make. That, I will not be at home because I'm going to step out to work with these two other gentlemen, can't work from this home. uh, I'm not bringing cash on the table, of course. But then within 6 months before her maternity leave expired, I had to start bringing some cash home, or at least start reducing the expense, because otherwise she had to join her job, which at that point of time she did not want to, because she wanted to take care of our kids. And I'm proud to say that she continues to do that. She's a Last 6 years she has been running our own business now, but she is more available to the kids than I am, even an entire week. So I think that was actually a very very tough call to make. I am very sure that if I had told Vineet and Abhishek back then that, guys, not the right time, give me another 6 months, 1 year, let this time pass over, maybe we'll start some other time, I'm pretty sure they would not have said no. They would have said yes. But somehow it just felt that yes, this was the right time. Can't put it in exact words why it felt like the right time. Just did that. But that was definitely the toughest decision about starting up.
And when you think back, right, you had like a bunch of friends and you were getting together. There was this camaraderie. You were starting something up. I'm sure each of you had things happening in your lives at the time that warranted, de-risking whatever you were doing. And yeah, I mean, in a sense, the services business um, doesn't require as much of a spend upfront or an investment upfront. But how have you navigated that steering the company in this direction vis-a-vis, the productization, which has been one of the big pieces that a lot of people have continued to push towards over the years?
See, I think after the first 2 3 years, I think we made a loss in the second year. We made a very thin profit in the first year. Not more of a profit, I would say more of a book profit, because the three founders did not take any salary, so it remained a profitable company. We decided that. But over the last 9 years, we have been profitable, and hence cash was not the real decision maker in terms of whether we remain a pure services company or move into a product company. I think one of the big reasons why we did not seriously look into products was because we are still I would say dabbling with that important question. That one decision, of course, is about cash, because it has to be a very serious attempt. You can't do a product with limited amount of cash, just build a certain UI, flaunt it as a product, and then see if somebody buys out. I think the decision was about the DNA. So, my own DNA before I started Affine, and with Affine last 20 years, I am a services guy. I've never done products. Unfortunately, Vineet and Abhishek, very brilliant minds, but never done products. Ashish, who's practically my second lieutenant right now, 22 years, 23 years in the industry, never done products. Rajesh, never done projects. Prajesh, to some extent has done products. Saurabh Tandon has been more of a, investment banker and a business strategist, now the president of my company in the US, has not done products. So I think that's where we had always taken the call, that if we don't see somebody in the senior most management who can run with this kind of a company within company, I would say. So once we are able to find an entrepreneur in residence who we all believe in and fund that entrepreneur well enough to start the company, we'll do that. So I think we are waiting for the entrepreneur in residence.
Right. So this is a hiring call.
This is a hiring call, or maybe one of the guys, they
And
turn
it
up
didn't
one
even
fine day
take
as,
coffee.
yeah, exactly.
I saved you a cup of coffee.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so you started Affine with a group of friends. There must have been some friction along the way. What, in your memory, was the biggest piece of friction that you guys came up against, and how did you deal with it? You're still together 10 years down the line.
Yeah. If frictions were not just one or two of them, Pavitra, because all the reason the three of us started was because we had this craziness. We that yes, we can do it on our own, and we had a very strong sense of individuality. All three of us very confident of what we were talking about. So I think frictions are a part and parcel, unless it is a situation which is very lopsided, where one person is super confident, the others are not so, and then one person's call goes all the way. I think all three of us know how to speak our mind out. So I think at least for the first 5 6 years, first not 5 6 years, maybe first 4 years, frictions used to be a part of our daily lives. Every alternate day we'll end up having one small bout in the ring. Small things like I would say no appraisal template needs to be designed this way. Abhishek will have a different point of view because he's sitting in US. He looks at a client point of view. I'm sitting here in India, and me and Vineet are looking at a operational point of view. Vineet is, one of the more scientifically gifted minds among the three of us. So he will look at a problem statement in a slightly different way. I look at it in a slightly different way, little more business oriented compared to the two of them. So I think that difference in opinion, and all of us being very straight shooters, uh, earlier we were friends, so we used to have banters and fights with each other any which way, so nothing stopped. I think what remained, the glue that stuck us together, was one fundamental belief that none of us are in here to make any personal gains. Not personal gains as in, yes, we all obviously all of us want to make it a success, but we are not looking at this becomes my success and not for Vineet or Abhishek.
Right.
And the other two feeling, or me feeling that, oh, Vineet is doing something which is his personal glory and not right for the company. Yes, our opinions may differ, but he's also thinking Affine first. I think if you just have that faith in you, and thankfully all three of us have worked towards it to keep that faith alive. We have not given a chance to anyone to prove us otherwise. I think that underlying faith is one that allowed us to tide through. Also, I think what probably allowed us to tide through was that I was their manager before we started, and I
Right.
was slightly more grayish in terms of my hair, so there was some inherent respect also. And sometimes you need that to quell the debates and say, guys, we need to move on. So, while I think it would have been more of a, okay, let's look at who's the most experienced, making the CEO kind of a call on the first day. But I think, after having made me the CEO, these two guys gave me that respect, that even if we differ, uh, if you take the call as what you like, we'll back you up.
Right.
Once a call is made, it's made. I think there should not be any brooding over, oh, yes, it was your mistake. Fine, okay, mistakes do happen, big deal. I
Right.
think those very fundamental things worked out. But frictions are, I think, part and parcel. My very sincere suggestion to partners: don't let frictions carry on to the next day. Have a better fight. If you drink, even better. But drink it out, close it out, close that chapter on day one. If you have something in heart, don't keep and bring it out after 2 months. Even that time you did that. It's not a husband and wife fight, for God's sake, please.
What is the closest that you came to exiting Affine in all these years? Did you ever consider it? I mean, of course,
Yes.
there were, yeah, can we talk about that?
Yeah, so that was very early days, very, very early days. And as I said, there was a time when, we had to walk into the room and tell people that, guys, we don't have money. While they supported us amazingly well. I mean, we were around 10 of us, and every single person, just walked into, my cabin and said, it's okay. When we joined you, we knew that something like this could come up. And I think we have enough money to survive for next 6 months. And 20% is decent enough. We'll cut down on some of our expenses, or we'll beg borrow. But don't worry, we'll stick together with you, I think. But right after that also, we knew that it's not going to be easy. So we were invited by a gentleman in US, because we knew him through some network, and he was in the Bay Area. He invited us that, let me hear you out at least. I think making that call was also very tough, because he said that, I'm available for the next 5 days if you can travel, because after that I'm starting to travel on my own, and I'll be back in the US only after 2 months, and India is not on my itinerary right now. So if you want to come and meet me, we can discuss investment, and I can close it across the table. We didn't have money, but and he said, I want to meet all the three of you. So for the three of us to fly down when we didn't have money at a short notice, it costed us almost around 8 to 10 lakhs back then. And we went there, and it ended up being a acquisition call rather than investment call. That was, the closest we came to thinking that yes, we should see acquisition, in a sense that this gentleman would have acquired a majority, or his firm would have, and I hold this gentleman in extremely high regard, but for what he has achieved for the Indian entrepreneur community in US, especially in the Bay Area. An amazing personality, and I would have been privileged if I were associated with him. But just the thought that, still just 1.5 years into the company, and 70% will belong to someone else, with 30%, and then some leaving some part for other employees, will end up being just employees with larger ESOPs, nothing more than that. I think
Right.
that was the closest we came to getting acquired. Would have been very easy, because all of us would have made some decent amount of money back then, more than what we were making in our jobs, and would have got a very fantastic backing of somebody who was extremely revered in the Bay Area. Would have made sure that the company would have been successful getting customers and all. He already had a amazingly large, multi-billion-dollar company under his fold. So it would have been very easily, but just that the fun of building it on your own would have gone away. So that was the closest we came to exiting. After that, once we were able to shed that off, I think it was easier.
Right. What would your advice be, Manas, for somebody who's planning a startup today? What would you advise them to look at or start with?
I would not get into the very specifics of what kind of business plan to make and all, because quite difficult. I think the first advice would be that, see if you are not doing it alone. Would not deter people from doing it alone. There have been tons of people who have done it alone and have succeeded, but um, even for Elon Musk, the first successful one was at PayPal, if I remember correctly, along with Peter Thiel and all. So I think it was not alone. I think the first advice would be, see if you can work with a couple of more people. I think three is a very apt number of co-founders, or two co-founders rather than apart from yourself. I think that would be one big advice. See if it could be complementary skills, but definitely make sure that these people from the past, because to tide over first few years, you need more than just a professional alignment. uh, you know Three people thinking professionally same is very easy, but three people sticking together despite differences is what you need, not three people thinking alike. That will never happen. If it's a true entrepreneurship, that will not happen. If
Right.
it's like you own 90%, the other two people own 5%, it may happen. So I think that would be the first big piece of advice. Second would be that, when you are making your business plan, start giving much more probability to bad events. As entrepreneurs, we need to be optimistic it will work out. And I'm not saying that put in a lot of bad events to scare you off. Put in those bad events to do a sensitivity analysis or a scenario analysis on how would I react if this happens. I'm not saying that you will be able to plan for everything. Nobody would have planned for what we are going through right now. Very unfortunately, nobody would have planned. But how do you react to that? If you have at least one thought in mind, especially among the co-founders, the guys, what if we come to this stage? What would we do then? At least we would have had one thought in mind, and when it strikes you, you may be less surprised. At least you will be not disappointed, because you had already figured it out. So I think the Excel sheet should be used less for making out those template P&Ls and cash flow statements and that, and leave that to investment bankers. I think they need it for completing their paperwork. But as entrepreneurs, try to figure out what all could go wrong and how would you react, because trust me, 99% of the things will go wrong, 1% of the thing will go right. So things will keep going wrong on almost a day-to-day basis, and there's nobody else to help you out. See, as you know, no offense meant to even the senior most employees in any company, but you have finally somebody who will take the call. If it's a professional CEO also of a large company, he has a board, he has investors who will end up taking the call. As an entrepreneur, you are all alone. So I think that would be one very big piece of advice. If investment comes a long way, or if you can stitch together investment early on, do not fall into the trap of, oh, this is at a very very bad in valuation.
Right.
I think cash coming in early at any valuation. I'm not saying that go to the extent where you end up giving 50% of your company and all, but uh, for a 20-25%, if you are getting half of what you really think you should get, take it.
Right.
Because the you are sometimes we are not able to value the criticality of that money at that point of time as much as you would do after 3 months. It allows you to sustain longer. Initial days are about sustenance. Initial days are about sticking together for you know s- till the time it starts shining again. So I think take cash in early if it's available. Be very frugal. Also, see if you can initially hire people who are less of, I would say, specialist, but more of people who can roll up their sleeves, but be very good learners. I mean, these people may not be specialists, but these to be need to be people who can learn things quickly and adopt to new situations, adopt to new roles. I think picking up that right first team is also very important. First 10, 15, 20 people
Right.
is very very critical, and see if you can share the successes with them. It's amazing feeling to have one of your first few employees. You're having your first employee Alex still with me, having Ashish, Rajesh, some of these guys still sticking along. I think that's an amazing feeling. So yes, these are some of the advices I would have for the final advice. If you feel that this is the right time, if your gut calls you, don't wait. Take the plunge. Yeah, I mean, it's not so difficult. It's don't make too much of plans ahead. Don't try to think of it too much. If you are confident that you can get a job after 6 months of entrepreneurship experience, and I will not call it a failure, and I am always on the lookout for people who have tried it for even 3 months, because you had the courage in you. And I think what I have seen, Pavitra, is that all geographies, not just Bangalore or the Bay Area, absolutely any sensible company would value your entrepreneurship experience more than, and they would not ask you, oh, you failed. No, you attempted, you succeeded, you succeeded in crossing the chasm of 99% people feel that they should do it. Hardly 1% end up doing it. So I think that
Right.
would be my big suggestion. Try it out. It's not so difficult.
And how has your definition of success evolved over the years, Manas, with what's happened with Affine over the years? And where were you when, as a student, your definition of success must have been something. What's changed?
I think when you are a student and you look up to people who have made it extremely large, your measure of success is extremely large. Because you believe that, yes, finally that's the goal. But I think 10 years in a fine, I think has given me enough number of valuable lessons that it's not just a financial metric that your success should be measured in. It should also be measured in, were you able to sustain, were you able to do it well, did you make uh, at least 50% of the right choices. I trust me, 50% of your choices will go wrong, but were you able to make 50% of them right? Did you stick around long enough? Were you I think entrepreneurship is marathon. It's not just about completing the sprint in less than 12 seconds or 10 seconds, but it's about completing that 42 kilometers. It's not easy. So I think that's what changes the definition of success. How many people stick around with you when you celebrate your fifth year, your 10th year, hopefully the 15th year. I think that makes a lot of sense. And personally for me, and I'm confident I'm speaking for my other two co-founders also, I think the other big success, other way to measure your success, not just success, your journey should be, is there even a single person who feels that you kind of cheated uh, that person? either as an employee or a partner, that you intentionally did something wrong. I think one is you should not do it. Second, you should, as entrepreneur, try as much as possible stay above water. Things will happen in the right way. So I think those are some of the things I would put together as measure of success. Very difficult to do that when you are in college. All that sounds little too cheesy, too emotional, and that time it is. And I think thankfully when I started, there's this and not a concept of unicorns and companies that are valued at $1 billion and $200 million investment and all. So thankfully we did not have that kind of a target that okay, we have to become a unicorn someday. I think entrepreneurs today are unnecessarily under that peer pressure. I think if you can set smaller targets, that I would try to make sure that I hang through at least 4 or 5 tough times, go through at least 2 or 3 very severe draws. If I'm able to survive, I think that itself should be measured as success.
Right. Right. Um, any message that you would like to leave for our audience? Any thoughts that you'd like to share?
One of the things that I really would want to share with anyone thinking around entrepreneurship, or even my fellow entrepreneurs who are still very young in their journey, is that again a very very oft repeated line, but not sure how much valued it is. Value your people above anything else, right? So uh, I would not say that work life balance is very easy. Work life balance is extremely tough in startups. Long hours is a norm, but please do not start celebrating that. Do not celebrating the fact that your people get burnt out. Empathize with them. They are getting burnt out to build your company as an entrepreneur, build your dream out. So please, at least the least you could do is empathize with them, and also um, see if you can start valuing their families. It's not just about okay, no, this was the total medical insurance available to you. Maybe a couple of lakhs here and there would not hurt your company as much, but trust me, it goes a long way in building uh, that empathy back to you. And it
Right.
it that ROI is amazingly high. When your people start trusting you, feel that you care about them, and not care as in we are finally peers. I'm the CEO, he's the chief operating officer, he's an SVP. Big deal. I mean, we are playing different roles, but at least if we can build that culture. So that would be one big suggestion, one big message. Try to build a company where people at least work in that uh, faith that you're
Right.
not doing anything wrong intentionally, and you do not celebrate screwed up work life balance. Don't celebrate it. It's a reality, we all know. At least put families and people first, and it'll give you amazing result. Trust people. Start with the assumption people are good.
Right. And that's a really good note to kind of wrap this up on. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Manas. Thank you very much for joining us at Slow Saturday Nights. And I look forward to having you over again for the next part of your journey and another set of stories
Oh,
soon.
sure. No, it was lovely for me as well, Pavithra, because it was reliving some of these moments. And as we get busy in our lives, some of these things just remain buried in diaries and papers. You just sometimes end up visiting when you're looking at old photos and all. So thanks for walking me down the memory lane. I hope beyond just the chit chat, it was something valuable for some people. But interesting, and I'll love to come back to the show, sharing some of the more memories next time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Manas.
Thank you. Have a lovely weekend ahead.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
Bye
take
bye.
care. Bye.